So let's start off with cutting to the punch. What does this phone have compared to its competitor, which would be the Galaxy S6 and the Galaxy S6 Edge? Well, we've got the obvious, the front-facing stereo speakers here, and we've also got a micro SD card slot. So if you're someone who is itching for expandable storage, the M9 still has an SD card slot. A lot of you probably knew these things already, but I figured I would state them and just get them out of the way for the rest of the time. So now let's focus on the look and feel here. The HTC One M9 looks very similar to the M8 and then to the M7. We all know that HTC really likes their design language. They think if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But after a while it can get kind of boring, but we do have some noticeable changes here, starting with the side. You can see that we've just got the volume rocker here, where here we've got two separate volume buttons and then also a power button. And I always lamented over the fact that the power button was on the top. I did not like that power button on the top. On the M8, I always had to extend my hand upward and do a strange amount of work just to turn the device on, unless I could just do the double tap, which does work well. The irony is that over time, I did not like this button layout. It's really nice to be able to have the ability to turn on the power where it's really accessible to your thumb, but everything is in such close proximity that it's hard to make a distinction between anything here. We do have a little bit of a texture here on this power button, but I could not tell what I was pressing on unless I looked or felt and counted 1, 2, okay, 3. So I found this to be counterproductive. A lot of the time, I ended up thinking this was the down volume button, and I ended up turning off the phone all the time. That's something that I've done constantly with this phone. I think I would appreciate this power button on the other side, or the volume rocker on the other side, something where everything isn't in such close proximity to where it just causes confusion. So I am not happy with how this is. And you can see that these buttons here are quite flush, so they're just not so easy to find. With that volume rocker, it was very much more deliberate on the M8. So I think the HTC has tried to make some improvements here, but we're not quite there yet. Otherwise, at a passing glance, you could not tell the difference between both of these devices. The only other telltale thing that we have here is that we've got this bit of a step that goes all along the sides here now, whereas on the M8 everything was entirely smooth. At first I didn't like this. I also thought it was weird that it's dual toned. You can see that this part is silver but this part is gold. It kind of reminded me of a coin. Are Euro coins like that, where you've got the silver and on the side you've got a separate color? It looks like a coin to me. Well, not much difference, as this looks like a kitchen appliance named Chef Gordon Ramsay, affectionately of course. But this step thing here has proved to be quite useful, as the M8 was always very slippery and hand-feeling to me. I felt like I would drop it, and I was always terrified of that. But this does give it an extra bit of grip, and I'm not afraid that I'm going to drop this anymore. Not afraid at all. I do notice that this is quite sharp here, and it does hit your hand in quite a rough and aggressive way, but after a while you get used to this. But admittedly, the M8 feels a lot nicer in hand that way. Speaking about dropping this, ironically, I put this in my back pocket, wasn't really paying attention, having a little bathroom break, that type of thing. And it fell onto the hard floor, tile floor. Got this little bit of a ding. What it did was it hit flat on that display, then it bounced again and made a little bit of a chip. So I can tell you that this is a durable phone. Other than that little tiny mark, there is nothing else happening. It hit flat on that display and that Gorilla Glass floor did not crack. So I'm happy to see that this is a durable phone. It's got that protection. Protection. So just say if I was to crack this display, HTC is making it so for completely free I can get a brand new phone, no questions asked, 1 time a year. So I thought that was pretty cool. When I turned around to pick up the phone, I thought maybe that was the time I would have to get my replacement, but no, it has fared well. Other obvious differences include the cameras on the back. You can see this is the dual camera. We no longer have that. It's just a single 20 megapixel sensor. We will talk about that in a little bit. Versus the 4 megapixel ultra pixel sensor, which has graduated to the front here. Whereas here we had a 5 megapixel sensor. What I'm noticing now with the texture is that this actually feels like it might be brushed aluminum, where here I think this is painted on. You can see here that somehow this got scratched. This looks like a deep chip, but it's not. It's simply just a scratch or a smudge. So this layer here is a lie. It's been painted. But this really actually feels like it's brushed aluminum, so I like that. Now let's check out our displays here. 5 inches. This has not changed from the M8 to the M9. 1080 by 1920, 441 pixels per inch, that same pixel density. At 5 inches you can't complain, it does look nice and sharp. We don't have a Quad HD display on here yet, but with that pixel density at 5 inches I don't have much to complain about. I did mention that we have Gorilla Glass 4 over Gorilla Glass 3 on this. Basically, Gorilla Glass 4 is a little bit harder to scratch. And they also claim that if you were to drop this from about 1 meter, that if it falls on a rough surface like pavement, it can survive up to 80% of the time. I don't know what that means exactly, but I did try it, like I mentioned just a second ago, and it works. There's no cracking. We've had a lot of people angry though about how the display hasn't seemingly changed, although we are seeing that maybe the display has changed for the worse, although honestly when looking at both of these displays I see the common fare of HTC, at least with the behavior of the display, though I do notice that the white point is more considerably green on this display, whereas on this one it's bluish but it's not greenish. The white point is quite bluish. I used a colorimeter to get a temperature reading on both of these displays, and they're both really quite bluish, quite cool. I do see that there were some variations where some people were getting a little over 7,000 Kelvin for the M8, but variations. So these displays look very similar to me, except for there's a lot more green balance in here. I do notice that this display doesn't have as wide of a gamut as the M8, and you can really tell that in terms of the yellows. Plus HTC has done some weird color tweaking on the M8. They're doing some interesting color tweaking on the M9 as well. That's just something that they do. We're not looking for accuracy. They're trying to give an effect. So really where I see a difference is in the yellows, particularly a little bit in the greens. As for the gamma on both of these, you can see that HTC tries to boost the shadows a little bit so that you get a little bit of a contrasty type of effect. So just looking at both of these panels, I would know that these were from HTC. I'm really not a fan though of this greenish tone to this display. It gives a greenish cast to just about everything. I don't particularly like very cool color temperature for displays, but this one doesn't look as bad to me in comparison as this. I do think that we've experienced a regression here, unfortunately. So let's move on to performance so far. Supposedly, performance is the thing that would make you upgrade from one device to the other. With the M8, this was one of the smoothest devices on the market, and it made it so much of a pleasure to use this device because it was so smooth. So here we now have the M9, and this thing has the newest generation SoC, the Snapdragon 810. This is a Snapdragon 801. This is an octa-core CPU now. It's got 4 lower powered cores. Those are the A53s. Those are clocked at 1.5 gigahertz. Then it's got 4 higher powered cores that are claimed to be clocked at 2 gigahertz, although I'm seeing that they are capped at 1.6 gigahertz supposedly because of overheating. That would be to prevent overheating. As we are hearing, the Snapdragon 810 can get pretty hot. And this device is metal. You feel it when it gets hot. This device did get pretty warm as well. It could get pretty toasty during some intense processes. So this is the Snapdragon 801. This has got a quad-core CPU inside of it, 2.3 gigahertz. This is Adreno 330 and Adreno 430. So specs-wise, that says that this one would be worth it because it's a newer generation processor. But like I mentioned, this was one of the smoothest devices that I had ever played with. So what has it been like performance-wise to use this device? Well, for the most part, going about the interface, it's been feeling pretty nice and smooth, fairly similar to the M8. I'm going to go underneath developer options. I want to show you something real fast. So here we have on-screen as bars. So what I notice is that the HTC part of the interface is very nice and smooth. You see a frame drop maybe here and there, but it's really not bad. But as soon as you go into those lollipop type features, you're seeing frames dropped everywhere, lots of them. And here we are looking at these recent app cards, and you've just got dropped frames galore. So these HTC menu parts, the app tray, all of that looks pretty nice and smooth, but then you get some really nice drop frame results. To be fair, I see similar things with the M8. The M8 still feels very nice and smooth even on Lollipop, but some of those Lollipop features, although I see it doesn't drop as many frames, it's still dropping frames. Now in terms of overheating and throttling and just general everyday use, just taking this phone out and about, checking emails, writing emails, doing social media stuff, I don't notice it really overheating, and I don't notice anything special in particular about performance. It still seems to be nice and smooth to me. I do notice if I'm out on LTE and I'm on the web for a while, browsing things, it can get pretty toasty. But like I said, in normal usage, I don't notice anything significant until I start doing more higher level processes where I'm starting to play games. And then, of course, that gets quite toasty. So if you do a plethora of benchmarks, yes, you do see that we have quite a bit of throttling. I did use some CPU-based testing benchmarks, and I can see that you do get quite a drop in score, but it doesn't seem to affect much of the usage around the system. At least I'm really not noticing it. In gameplay, you get the same thing as well. I was using GL Bench and running Manhattan on screen over and over and over again, and I could see that I went from getting 24 frames per second on screen to dropping down to 13 frames per second. Interestingly, that's about the same score, 13 frames per second, that we're getting on screen for the M8. So still, it's getting comparable performance to the M8, even at its lowest, it seems. What matters entirely is real-world usage, and here I have Game Bench, and I played Asphalt 8. I did go a little bit over time here. What I can see is that the median performance of frame rate is still much higher here on the M9 than on the M8, so I do notice and enjoy higher frame rates when playing Asphalt 8. You can see that we're hugging along 30 frames per second on the M8. We're on the M9, well, we do get a lot of variation here, but we are getting some higher frame rates. So it is getting toasty, it is heating up, but I've been enjoying the performance so far. The question would be, is the performance increase good enough to go from an M8 to an M9? Well, that's a little bit harder to debate. I still really like the M8 over the M9. If you are a specification junkie, maybe that really matters. You do get a little bit higher frame rates, but I'm still liking the M8. So for me, when deciding between both of these devices, this new SoC is kind of give or take for me, especially when we see the competition being so much better of a performer. But what about the new features? Is that something that would drive me to purchase the M9 over the M8? We've got a couple of new things that are notable. Underneath Personalize here, we have the ability to change navigation buttons, and you can add an extra button along the bottom here. So let's just say hide navigation bar, we can say done. And now what we can do here is hide this extra spot. So we've got full screen here now. And then in order to pull it back up again, you can see I just swipe from the bottom. So that can be handy when I want to have full screen. I can choose a variety of other options here, such as having the ability to turn off the display from here. You can see now if I touch this, it turns off the display, so I don't have to press it from here. I haven't found this to be all that useful myself. I just like to have the 3 here because it's predictable. I know where I'm supposed to press. But this does give you some extra options. We also have the option for themes now. This is an option that I really like. You can choose one of the themes from their current catalog. This includes themes that are already on the system or ones that you can download. You can see we've got all these themes here. These ones are free. You can also create a theme for yourself. So we just took pictures of some pennies, dimes, other currency. You can see you can select themes here, and it's going to create a color palette for you. So let's just say original, for example. This is going to be our background. It says create theme, style. Styles can change the icons, sounds, and fonts. So we've got some preset type themes here. That one's Calvin, this is Freestyler, and you can see that it chooses the color palette based on the colors that we have sitting here. So let's just say that as a base theme that I like Calvin, I can hit edit then. I can choose other wallpapers if I'd like. I can choose textures and colors. I can change that color palette around. I can change my icons to what they offer here. I can change my sounds, my fonts. Then after when I'm done, I can preview it. And I can hit finish, call it theme 2, and it applies for me. So this is something that I haven't really used so much yet. I kind of just like a lot of the pre-included themes and some of the themes that people create. But you can see that there is endless customizability here, and that is kind of the idea. So that is a nice new feature here. We've also got our stereo front-facing speakers. We have HTC, who is paired up with Dolby, so we have this virtual surround sound. We have 2 different modes. So here we have Lost. I can switch mode. This is kind of tricky because it disappears as soon as you hit pause.
Whatever I want.
See, we have the option of theater mode, and we've also got the option of music mode. Now, I think these are really appropriately named. If you are listening to music, I would definitely use the music mode, because otherwise, the effect of the theater mode on some music, it feels like you are listening to music with one window rolled down, and you've got that weird effect on your eardrums. It just doesn't feel very nice. But if you're watching a show, for instance, or you're watching a movie, it creates an interesting stereo resolution. I'm really not sure what to think so far about these, especially in comparison to the M8. I'm going to take some time playing with them further. It's gimmicky, it's fun, but it does create an interesting effect. We've also got some new camera features. Actually, some of these are from the Eye features, the HTC Eye experience that we did get updated on the M8. What's really notable here is we have a bokeh mode, so we don't have that dual camera system anymore, but you still can get some nice results with this bokeh mode. When I played around with this at MWC, I could see that while it processes the image, you do end up getting some parts of the image that are blurred out that shouldn't be. We've got the new photo booth settings. All of these I tested out while at MWC. We've got some new fun editing features, which I really have not found to be all too useful. So for effects, we've got the ability to play around with shapes. There's a lot of things with shapes here. So you can change the color. We've got options here for opacity. Just change it to a variety of different things. I really don't know what I would use a lot of this stuff for. We've got a double exposure option. We have a kitty cat. So I guess you can get creative with this. But these really aren't huge selling points of this phone. I do like now that we have the option for 4K video. We have a sensor that can have 4K video. It's no longer a 4 megapixel sensor, it's 20 megapixels. Unfortunately, we don't have optical image stabilization, and we don't have any type of digital stabilization either for video. So I think that that is a major downfall. We have some of the elements needed to make a great camera here, but they fell short. Also, so far of what I have seen with the camera quality, it's just okay. I had a chance to take some pictures with the M9, and then I have the S6 Edge here, and I took some pictures side by side with this as well. And I could see that right now there's a lot more detail in the image of the S6 Edge. Unfortunately, it looks like HTC has a lot of noise reduction, and a lot of things look smeared and almost watercolor painted. I hear that there is an update that's coming out. Some people have already gotten this update. Some people are saying that this update improves camera performance. I have not gotten that yet. That's something that I will be including in a later review. So I would say that the overall camera quality so far with what I have seen is just okay. I really do wish that there was more detail in the pictures. The last thing that I want to talk a little bit about is the battery life on this device. I have to say that it's been actually pretty hard to get an idea of what's going on with the battery life. The reason being is that I am seeing that Google Services is using quite a bit of battery when the screen is off especially. Just last night I had this at 100%. I woke up in the morning and it was at like 72% battery. So I'm having a really hard time getting a reading of what the battery life is like, but just so far with using it throughout the day, I can see that I have to charge it a couple times during the day to get it to last through the day. Here's a 24-hour period. Yes, I am up very, very late, and I've had to top the battery off several times during the day. because I can see that the battery really doesn't last that long. If you're someone who's a power user and someone who relies on your battery all day long, just say like a 13-14 hour day, for example, you're probably going to have to charge this at least once during the day. With the HTC One M8, I didn't have any trouble getting through the day. Even when I updated it to Lollipop, it still lasted me through the day without any problem, so I'm really not so happy with the battery. It's a larger battery that we have inside of this now. And with this new SoC, it's supposed to be more power efficient, and it's the same resolution display, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on with this, and it looks like a lot of people are confirming the same things, that the battery life isn't that great. So I'm going to have to test this out more for a later review. But so far, I am just not impressed with the battery life. It really is quite a bummer. So you can see so far why I don't really want to make a full in-depth review yet, because I feel like we need to wait around a little bit to see what this starts performing like. I'm hoping that a couple of updates will help out the camera, will help out with battery life. It's really hard to say right now at this point if we're going to be seeing some overall improvements. So let me know what you think. Maybe you have this device already. This device does have some interesting and unique features. What I really love about the M8 is it's got those front-facing speakers. I watch a lot of content on my phones, so I love having those stereo front-facing speakers. They sound pretty nice. It is nice having that SD card slot, although it's not a huge priority on my list. And I like that metal body, even though this one kind of looks like a coin. And it does feel nice and premium in the hand. It's got that nice rounded finish. So it's got some advantages. I really do want to give this phone a chance, but honestly, between both of these, this feels like such an incremental update. I don't think, if I had the M8 right now and I was ready to upgrade, I don't think that I would go to the M9. I think I would keep the M8 for a while and see if I wanted to upgrade to something else coming out, maybe go with the S6 or S6 Edge, or maybe even see if a year after this, if HTC is still around, if there's something more interesting that they release.